This is Immigrant Podcast with Robinson.
Welcome, everybody, to the Immigrant Podcast with Robinson. I'm very excited today to present to all of you Taras. Taras, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Robinson. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. You are going to be a very important piece of this Season 2 podcast. So before we get started with our topic today, which is a very interesting topic, because we are very, very close to tax season. Who are you? People would like to know a little bit more about you, what you've been doing for the past 25, 30 years. So the floor is yours. Take it.
Okay. Well, I'm a financial advisor based here in Montreal. I've been doing this since 1997. I run a pretty good practice that deals with young families, business owners, and the elderly as well, because everyone ages. I work with investments, insurance, tax planning, work with specialists, tax lawyers, accountants, notaries, actuaries to make sure that my clients have everything they need for a good, solid financial plan.
And what's your family background? Where are your parents from? Were you born here? Are you an immigrant? Could you expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, I am a second generation Canadian. Dobry deň, dobry ludzie was something my father always said when he came home from work. My father was born in Ternopil Oblast in Ukraine in 1927. So when he was 14 years old, the Germans came in and he was taken to a forced labor camp in southern Germany for the duration of the war. After the war, he made his way to Belgium, worked in the coal mines for 7 years, became a jack of all trades, and ended up emigrating to Canada, where he met my mother, who is a third generation Canadian of Irish and English descent. And she learned the Ukrainian language. She wasn't fluent in it, but she understood it very well. And went to Ukrainian school. Don't use it as much as I should or I could, but when you're immersed in it, I've been back to visit my father's family. And once you're immersed in it, you remember and you are able to speak it with many errors, but you do the best you can.
That's true. Дуже дякую. So let's get right into the topic. Could you explain, because this is something for sure very important, especially for all the newly arrival immigrants that we have here in Canada, how to file an income tax for the first time in Canada?
Yeah. Most people feel very overwhelmed. They're in a new country. They're sometimes afraid. They don't know what's going to happen. But now that they're here, it's a pretty straightforward process once you follow the following steps. The first thing you have to do, Robinson, is obtain all of your tax documents. Okay, you'll need your T4 slips from your employer, which shows your total income that you've received and the taxes that were withheld at source for both the Quebec and federal governments.
Very good.
2, what you should do is you should sign up with the government My Account at the CRA website. Okay, this is an online portal where you can view your tax information and file your tax return if you so choose. On the Quebec side, it's a very similar site. It's called Click Secure. So the same process, all of your tax information and any communication you can see with correspondence with the Quebec Revenue. Okay.
Okay.
You can file your taxes either 2 ways. One is directly online using a tax software and using CRA's net file service. and Revenue Quebec through the tax preparation software, or by paper versions. After you've gathered all your required information, this includes your personal information, income information, deductions, and credits, you can submit your tax return. If you
And
do
then,
file on, pardon me?
yes, and once submitted, you
Yeah,
have to wait for you either to pay the government or to get a refund?
yes. If you file online, you can submit your return immediately. If you file by paper, you got to mail your return to both the CRA and Revenue Quebec. After that, if you are getting a refund or you have to pay taxes, you have to pay them by the deadline, which is April 30th. If
Understood.
you're if you are getting a refund, you'll probably get the refund within a few weeks.
Perfect. Sounds good. And why? Because in a lot of countries, we don't really have to file taxes. Why is it important, or why do we have to file income tax return in Canada and Quebec?
Well, and as you know, we do have a lot of social programs here in Canada, which help subsidize lower income Canadians, and income tax is the fairest way of doing it. So in Canada and Quebec, individuals must file an income tax return to report their taxable income and calculate the amount of tax that they owe to the government. Filing a tax return is also necessary to be able to claim any tax credits or deductions that may reduce the amount that tax that you're owed. Remember, in Canada and Quebec, filing a tax return is a legal obligation, and failure to do so can result in penalties and interest charges if you do not.
So for our listeners, make sure that you do this. Make sure that you submit your taxes during the tax season. And Taras, could you explain the difference or the different tax credits available to Canadians and Quebecers once we
Yeah,
file the income tax?
there's quite a few of them. So first and foremost is your basic personal amount, which is a non-refundable tax credit available to all taxpayers. It is used to reduce the amount of tax payable on your taxable income.
Okay.
The second one is an age amount. This is another tax credit for our seniors above the age of 65. If you are disabled, there is a disability tax credit available for those with severe prolonged physical or mental disabilities. Canada Caregiver Credit. So if you have a parent that you are taking care of, there is a credit available to individuals who help care for those relatives with either physical or mental impairments. Here's another one that we've talked about earlier today: tuition, education, textbooks amounts. These credits are available to students for eligible tuition fees, education amounts, and textbook amounts. Interest paid on students' loans. If you need to take out a student loan to further your education, there's a credit to help individuals who have paid interest on the student loan in that tax year. Medical expense tax credit. Okay, this credit is available for eligible medical expenses that are not covered by private health insurance. If you do have a health plan with your employer, a lot of your expenses are covered. If,
Right.
let's say, 80% are covered and 20% are not, the 20% that are not covered, you're able to write off on your taxes. So there will be a credit for that.
That's very good to know. Interesting.
It is. In Quebec, we have two separate tax credits. We have the solidarity tax credit. This credit is a refundable tax credit designed to reduce your income inequality and support lower income individuals and families. And the tax credit for home support services for seniors. So if you are a senior living alone or living with your significant other, and you incur expenses, you keep all the receipts, all the bills, and you will get a credit for that.
So there are actually a lot of ways to get some credits once we submit our taxes. That's very good to know, because I think most of the time we are unaware of these things. And are there specific tax credits for newly arrived Canadians?
Of course, and for this podcast, these are the really important ones. There are
Right.
specific tax credits for newly arrived Canadians. The CRA, which is the Canada Revenue Agency, offers a number of non-refundable tax credits that may be claimed by eligible taxpayers. The first one, the non-refundable tax credit for newcomers to Canada, this tax credit is designed to help offset some of the costs associated with settling into Canada. Here's the next one is that pretty similar to the other one is tuition and education credits. So if you're educating to resume a career that you had in your former country, those costs for your education here in Canada can be offset by this credit. Canada Workers Benefits. This is also a refundable tax credit that helps low-income workers and families with the cost of living.
Okay, interesting. So we for sure have a lot of people listening and following the podcast who are um, newly arrived here in Canada. So for those, make sure that you take advantage of these three, if not more, of these credits that we have available. And Taras,
Just
what are
before you go on to the
yes,
next question, Robinson, sorry,
yes,
it's important to note that all of these credits will will really be on individual cases. They're not for everybody, but some of them could be for everyone. So it's really important that there will be a link at the end of this podcast that we're going to provide to everybody to further their own knowledge on how the Canadian tax system works.
that's true. That's true. Not everything applies to everybody. You're right. And that link is going to be added in the description below of this podcast. What are some of the best ways, and this is something I think everybody wants to know about, to reduce tax payable in Canada and Quebec?
Well, in Canada, we have what's called the Register Retirement Savings Plan that all individuals can use. They make contributions to this plan and it reduces your taxable income. That is one savings plan vehicle. Okay, that is to help you reduce the taxes. There is another plan called the tax-free savings account. Now, that does not reduce your income tax payable, but any growth gains, either interest income, dividend income, or capital gains, grow within the plan tax-free.
Right.
Now, the other ways are to take advantage of your tax credits for education, medical expenses, charitable donations, and any other eligible expenses, which are all on an individual basis. Now, you can also claim work-related expenses, such as vehicle or home office expenses on your tax return.
So if you work
Maximize
if you work from home, you can take advantage of this.
If you work from home, if you're one self-employed, there are more deductions than if you are employed. If you are employed, your employer will give you a special tax form to tell the government how much they've provided you for workspace at home. Some say you can write up to 15% of your rent for a home office to be able to do your work from home.
Good.
Another ways, let's say you're a family of four, only one of the two parents are working, the other one is not. You should consider splitting income with your spouse or partner. That can work very well. Also, if you are doing that, it's because every Canadian has a right to individual credits. So you might have had quite a bit of the money that you've earned withheld in taxes, but if your spouse is not working, then her or his credits will be transferred to you. So a lot of the taxes that you have paid, you will probably be able to get as a tax refund.
That's interesting. Good. Okay. Awesome.
Another one that's really important is there are Quebec specific tax credits, such as the Health Services Fund tax credits and credit for artists. So in the tax software, whether it's UFile or TurboTax or many of these, which they're free to use. It's only time when you submit the taxes that you actually have to pay, and it's usually about $24 or $25 to use this software. And if you use the same software every year, it keeps everything in saved for you, so you're able to access your previous tax returns. Now, all of this, it's really important if you have specific things that are a little bit more complicated. It's probably very important to consult a professional tax expert or qualified accountant for your personalized advice and to ensure compliance with the tax laws and regulations.
Correct, because as financial advisors, we can recommend things on how to reduce taxes, but we are not the ones here to help you file the taxes. That's the job of an accountant to do.
Correct.
I think it's a good idea to talk to an advisor, a financial advisor, for some of the benefits already mentioned in your intervention during the podcast. But you need an accountant no matter what, unless you have the knowledge or you decide to take your time to learn how to do it on your own using one of the applications or systems that you mentioned. And when do we file our income taxes in Canada and Quebec?
Well, in Canada and Quebec, we have the same deadline. It is April 30th of each year. If you're an individual, if you're self-employed, you have your own business, the deadline is June 15th. If you have any taxes owing, you still have the April 30th deadline to submit what you are owing. In Quebec, it's the exact same thing. However, the deadline for self-employed people is extended to June 15th, and the balance owing is only owed on June 15th. So that's the difference between the Quebec and Canadian tax systems. Canada wants you to pay everything by April 30th. Quebec is giving you that extra couple, extra 6 weeks to pay and submit your taxes.
Perfect. Thank you, Taras, for all this information, and I hope that all our listeners take advantage of it. How can they reach out to you if they have other questions?
Well, if they have any questions on any of these things that we talked about, specifically on registered retirement savings plans or tax-free savings plans, you could easily reach out to me on my cell number is the easiest way to reach me. It would be 514-726-9097.
And I'm going to make sure to put it in the description below as well once the podcast comes out. We, as I said at the beginning, are going to have a lot of conversations during season 2, which is financial literacy season in the Immigrant Podcast. So this is not the last time you get to hear from Taras. We're going to be around for a couple of months, if not more, during the year talking about these things. And every 2 weeks, you're going to get the podcast. So Taras, once again, thank you. I'll see you and I'll talk to you next time.
Very good, Robinson. Thank you very much. And to everyone out there, don't be afraid. You can do this. Everyone, there's people here to help you to get through these taxes. And even Canadians that have been here all their life, some of them are afraid to even look at them. But don't be afraid. The people here are here to help you. If you have questions, both at Revenue Quebec or at the CRA, there are numbers to call. This is just a sidebar. There is a lot of scams out there that are happening for Amazon and all this. If you get one of these CRA phone calls, please just hang up, disregard it. CRA, Revenue Quebec, will never call you. If they ever have a question, they will send a letter to you. Okay? They will never ever call you no matter what. So if you ever get one of these voice recordings on your phones saying CRA or Canada Border Services, please disregard them. They are all scams.
That's a very important tip. Thanks for sharing, Taras. Once again, thank you. Until next time, everybody, please subscribe to the channel. And if this was important to you and you think you brought value, share it with your friends and acquaintances and everyone you know. Until next time, thanks for joining.
This was iMigrant Podcast with Robinson.